Hello everyone, this is John Alexis Guerra Gomez again with the online web development course for Northeastern University. These are the videos for week 11 after our project 3 where we were working on creating a Node Express React application. So for the example I have in here, I have the latest application we have been creating. Then let me run it so we can see it working. So I'm going to remember that we have two parts. One, it's the backend that we have in here with Basic Express and ESX, and then I'm going to start a new server for the front end, which I started again like this, so I don't have to get into the folder again. So if I go into my front end folder, basically I'm in the Node Express app folder, and then inside the front end where I actually have all of my React subproject. Remember that that's the way I like setting it up because it's easier to deploy it that way. And we have Express serving the static React like compiled version, which by the way we generate just by running something like this. So if I do that, then I should be able to see the deployed version here, and if I am not mistaken, then with this now we can create like new listings and things like that. Okay, so having done that, I guess I also have in here like some leftover from some of the explanations I made in class for lifting the state and elements like that, but let's leave it in there for the moment. So so as I'm saying in here, you can compile React for having this, but when we are doing development, since this is working with Vite, we can run the React or the Vite server, and then we use that one for development. Okay. So now that we have that, then we want to start adding like multiple routes, like because right now we have an application. It's what we call a single page application using React, and then let's say that, for instance, I want to go to, I don't know, like an about page. So if I do that, every time, regardless of where I go, it will always take me to the same page because of the configuration I have in here. Every time it doesn't find anything, it is just going to load the same index HTML, which is this one, and then that index HTML loads my main JavaScript, which is this one, which is just rendering that. Okay. So if I want to create, let's say, for instance, like another page in here, let's say I want to create like an about page. So for that, I can just copy and paste this one and then say, I want to create like an about page. And hopefully, like later, I could just go and say, hey, I want to show it in here. So remember that when you are using a React component, we use it as if it were an HTML tag, and that's what we are doing in here. However, this page hasn't been created at all, so now I have to go and do it. I am putting that inside components, so let's put it in here. A new file, I'm not going to call it about page GSX, and then of course make sure to spell correctly, and GSX, perfect. So let me close that and open it again, so it is opened with the correct format. And in there, remember that if you want to create a React component, basically what we have to do is just create a function. We can call it the about page as GitHub Copilot in there is recommending, and then I like that. Come on, that's enough. Too much added content, and then let's say I am going to close this, and there we go. So all of these just generated by GitHub Copilot just to have like some basic like about apartment finder. So we can use that just for the explanation. So if I want to show this page, you can see that it's actually showing up in here about the apartment finder, because the way I loaded it is that I am loading the index page and then the about page. So if I comment out the index page, by the way, you can do this in VS Code just by doing command /, or I think in Windows it may be control /, and comment this out. And the reason why it looks like that is because we are in GSX. So remember that every time we are in GSX, we are in XML or HTML mode. And if you want to do anything JavaScript related, like for instance a comment, then you have to use curly brackets. So that's why this is working like that. So now I have an about page, and it goes nicely in there, but then the question is, how do I get it that when I come in here, it shows me the index page, but when I go in here, like in /about, it gets me to the about page. So there are multiple ways of doing that. Remember that all of these ones in here that I'm describing are the ones that you need whenever we are using our current architecture, which is to use React as a front end or a front like client side rendering. So we are not doing server side rendering, which has been added in the later versions of React. We're using like a more straightforward format, which actually has some complications, and one of those is that you need to have routing. One classical framework that a lot of people are using nowadays, especially with the whole Next.js boom, it's with the whole vibe coding boom, is Next.js, probably because like the people from Vercel, who are the people who are behind this, have some really good agent coders that generate a lot of code with this. So we are not going to be learning Next.js because it is a little bit too opinionated. So we want something that you can reuse with whatever framework you want to use. So for that, we can use React Router. So we come in here in React Router, there is multiple ways of using this. I think we are going to be using the declarative mode. By the way, they have their own framework as well, I think is what I was seeing in here. So this is kind of like a competition of Next.js. So let's go and use this one. So if you want to use that one, then you can create an application using create byte, like we already did that. And then we want to install React Router. This one is one of the tricky ones because remember that we have two package JSONs, and the reason why we have two package JSONs is that we have two separate projects, one for the backend and one for the front end. This is a module that you need in the front end, so you have to be very careful to install it in the front end. So I'm going to install it in here in my front end folder, so I can just do npm install --save React Router. So after doing that, I hope, oops, I did it twice. Let me restart the web server, and then I can start adding my things. So what you need to do to use React Router, as this thing shows us in here, is that you need to go to the basic file that you're using for serving your pages, which is that same main.js that I was showing you before, if I can find it. So here in the source, here is my main.js. And in this file, let's make this a little bit smaller so we can have more space for that. We want to import, so probably in here will be a good place. So I want to import the browser router from React Router. Excuse me, I'm still a little bit under the water. And then the next thing is that you take your app, so the app that we had in here, and you wrap it inside this component. So remember, every time you want to use a component in React, use it as if it were an HTML tag. Okay? So now I can go and say, let's comment out the about page, and if you come in here, then like this one, it's working. Okay? The next thing is like, how do you handle the routers? So basically for that, you can import a couple more components from React Router, which are the routes and route. And the whole idea is that you put your routes inside a routes component. So I can put that one in here, and then let me close this up, and let me ignore Copilot for a moment. It was providing the correct answer in there. And then of course make sure that you close in the correct part. And then for every route that you create, that route is going to be also like a new component. And then it is going to have like two props. One is the path that says like when should this one be triggered, and then the second one is what is the component that you want to load in there. And then for this one, we want to include the index page that we had in there. We are not passing any parameters for that, so you can just self-close it in there. And it will be nicer like this way, so we can also do self-closing for that. And then oops, I always forget the keystroke for duplicating, so let's do it the classical way. And then for the about page, we want to show the about page. Okay, so now we are going to have this element, and then if I come in here, this one works perfectly, and if I go to about, then it actually rewrites. So that is the basics on how you can get routing. You can keep on reading in here for other parameters that you can use for the specific part of routing, especially if you have like URL encoded parameters, if you're creating like a REST API or REST kind of like, yeah, I guess API, I will say, although it's not technically an API, but like a structure of your website. So you can also use parameters in a similar way that you use in Express in here, so I strongly recommend you to take a look at that, okay? You can also create layouts that you see in here. I will probably show you how I do layouts directly with React, so you can use all of those elements. And that's how you add React router elements. So again, summarizing really quickly, remember that we have two projects. We have the backend project, and React is being served in the front end. And in that front end folder, what we did is that we installed the React router package, which you can see in here. So we installed the React router package, and in the main JS file, and you can see that that's the file that is being loaded in the index.js, which is the main HTML that is being rendered. We are going to be putting like basically this browser router, which contains routes, the list of routes, and then you are going to create one route for each one of these ones. Okay. For the next step, what we are going to do is that we are going to create like a little nav bar that let us navigate between the two elements.